Good morning, Metalheads the Internet. Um, Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown where we talk about shit. I don't fucking care. Let's just get right into it. Motley Crue is back, and this is terrible. Motley Crue, wildly influential, wildly popular 80s glam rock heavy metal band who went out of their way a few years back to convince us that their last tour was truly the last tour, to the point where they signed a legally binding contract stating that no one in the band could ever tour as Motley Crue ever again. They're back. Just fuck all that, I guess. And I would never normally make this kind of reactionary video for this type of information, or for that matter, for anything. And for the record, I normally find them to be kind of tacky, not knocking anyone who does it. I just don't think it fits what I normally try to do on the Metal Meltdown. But I have to make an exception in this case because what Motley Crue is doing is a colossal fucking mistake. And before anyone starts, I'm not saying this as some troubled little SJW libtard who can't handle some of Motley's antics in a post-Me Too world, nor am I saying this as some kind of metal elitist who only wants to listen to super technical, melodic, Norwegian black and death grind recorded on a fucking cassette because it's so brutal, man. I'm saying this because I love Motley Crue. Because records like Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil spoke to me in ways that no other music could speak to me when I was first learning about hard rock and heavy metal music. The rambunctious, raucous, in-your-face, almost punk rock mentality of Motley Crue spoke to me in a way that no other music could speak to me. A 12-year-old autistic kid who was pissed at the world and just was this fucking close to sucking every motherfucker that spoke to him. Motley Crue paved the way for the Metal Meltdown. Motley Crue paved the way for everything you see before you. Motley Crue paved the way for me, Robert Walton. Which is why I do not want them to return. I do not want them to tour. I do not want them to play a single show, and I certainly don't want them to make any more fucking music, because doing so would trample all of the good intention that their last tour had. Doing so would be to rampage over their legacy, over their no-nonsense, authentic rock and roll spirit. And this is all without even addressing the fact that half of them are in no shape to perform, and the other half that is in any shape to perform was never really that good at performing to begin with, so they compensated by being stupid. Because they aren't. They never have been. They probably never will be. And that was part of what I liked about them in the early 80s, is that they were so rough around the edges, is that they were so fucking primal and raw. But now, nearly 40 years down the line, and honestly, they just seem sloppy, kind of the same way that we look at a lot of early stuff from Venom, undeniably influential and insanely fun material. But would they actually be able to stand up against an actually technically proficient band in the black metal genre? Fuck no. So what chance does Motley Crue have against some of their peers like Def Leppard or fucking Poison, for that matter, both of whom they're actually touring with next year? And I especially feel bad for Mick Mars in this scenario, who has battled a debilitating disease for the majority of his life, and now, at more than likely the age of 60, it's never actually been confirmed how old this fucker is, but that's not important. What is important is that now he's an old man, and he's got to go out there on the fucking stage and play all these fucking songs, and the poor dude can't even fucking stand right because he's in so much visible agony. The man is infamously stiff as hell on stage, understandably so, but nonetheless. But it's arguably gotten worse as he's appeared in public more and more often over the years. Take, for instance, earlier this year when he appeared at a NASCAR race alongside Motley Crue and the cast of The Dirt to promote that aforementioned film. And they're standing over this microphone and they're doing the whole spiel where it's like, drivers, start your engines, and blah, 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 blah. And the poor fucking guy is standing there, kind of like this, hunched over, head down, but also kind of still sticking out, jutting like this. And he just kind of goes, and it's just so blatantly fucking clear that he does not want to be there, and being there is putting him in very serious pain. Like, if you saw somebody do that on the street, would you assume that they are mentally and physically ready to go start a summer tour with Def Leppard and Poison? Or would you call an ambulance? I would personally call a fucking ambulance. But more importantly, at least as far as performances are concerned, the real hurdle here is Vince Neil, a man who has frankly been horribly out of shape for a very, very long time. And I'm not talking about his physical appearance, but for the record, I do not think it would be exaggeration to say that he has probably not touched a treadmill or a Caesar salad in a very long time. No, I'm referring to his voice. I mean, his voice has gone to hell. He has trouble maintaining notes. He has trouble maintaining his tone. He consistently sounds absolutely terrible, and there's plenty of footage online to corroborate what I'm saying here. The man consistently sounds like he's huffed a bunch of helium in order to get a kid's smile for a family portrait. He consistently sounds like a pig trying to speak English. He consistently sounds like he's doing the world's worst Bob Dylan impression, but he somehow thinks it's great, so he just kind of keeps on going as if it's some kind of really bad comedy routine. I could seriously go on forever talking about how bad of a singer he has become in this last decade, and I'm willing to bet that even the most die-hard Motley Crue enthusiasts would be willing to agree that this man is not exactly vocally in his prime. Both of these guys are very simply not in any fucking shape to perform, and this brings us, of course, to the two semi-competent members left, who, frankly, I think I'm being generous when I say competent. I mean, Tommy and Nikki are perfectly fine at playing their respective instruments and doing exactly what is required of the songs that they have written, but they're not exactly the best in either of their fields. They're really no different from punk rock musicians in this sense, which is not inherently a bad thing, again, if you're a fucking LA glam band in the year 1982 playing in some dinky little clubs. But when it's 2019 and in theory you've been doing this for close to 40 years, I would expect that you would have learned how to, do shit. And with respect to both of these gentlemen, I have yet to see anything that informs me that they are incredible musicians, or at the very least good enough on their own to elevate Mick and Vince, who are arguably the main voices musically for this band. Well, inarguably in the case of Vince, and literally, but that's besides the point. And now I think it's time that we address the very obvious hoopla that Motley Crue kicked up during their retirement tour in order to convince us that it was indeed their retirement tour. To the point where Nikki Sixx went out of his way to make some pretty damning statements that, with all due respect, have aged about as well as the actual band and their music. Take, for instance, these paragraphs here written by Rolling Stone detailing some of the things that Nikki Sixx has said exactly. Legally, we can't play again, bassist Nikki Sixx claimed to Rolling Stone backstage at a 2014 show in November. The only loophole is if all four band members agreed to it, we could override our own contract, which is what they did for the record. But we know that will never happen, which we now know is not the case. There are people in this band who will refuse to ever do it again, and you're talking to one of them, which we also know is not the case. There is no amount of money that would ever make me do it again because I have such pride in how we're ending it. Going on to say later, and if we did agree, the way we've set it up, including this conversation right now, we'd have so much egg in our face, we have so much pride, that alone would stop it. So you heard it from Nicky himself. No amount of money could convince Motley Crue to reunite. No lack of pride either, for that matter. They were perfectly happy ending Motley Crue exactly where they left it. Well, that fucking backfired, didn't it? How much money were you offered, Nikki? Just go ahead and tell us. Be straight with us. Go ahead and tell us how much fucking money you were offered. Because I will not buy for a moment that you did this for any other reason other than a fat fucking paycheck. Like, seriously, you can't be doing this out of pride of being in such a seminal band and wanting to deliver this music to a new generation. Because on the note of pride, you made it very clear that nothing would bring you less pride than doing exactly that, than by resurrecting this band and shelling out. And that's without even mentioning the fact that you are playing and that's without even mentioning the fact that since leaving Motley Crue, and even arguably during Motley Crue's final moments, you were actually creating some pretty ambitious and intelligent material with 6am. Take, for instance, your debut record with that band, The Heroin Diaries, a concept album about drug addiction and the reality and the falls of fame based on your own private journal notes from 1987, which is now being turned into a Broadway musical in New York City. Is it just me, or does that sound inherently way more ambitious than Dr. Feelgood? And on the notion that you're doing this to introduce Motley to a younger generation of fans, I also don't buy this, because frankly, there's a good chance that this younger generation already knew who you were. I mean, walk into any Hot Topic, any Urban Outfitters, there's Motley Crue merch everywhere. And those younger fans that didn't already know about you through those retailers, and for that matter through other bands that have cited you as a massive influence over the years, more than likely knew about you through The Dirt, the biopic released earlier this year. Like, who the fuck are you introducing yourself to in this scenario? Everyone knows who you are. So the only logical conclusion left is that you are doing this for the fucking money, and it pisses me off because you never were about that, at least not in your glory days, and arguably not even in your final days. You fucking greedy fucking hypocrite. You are going to kill Mick. You are going to destroy Vince, all because you can't handle not having that fat Motley Crue paycheck. Like, you are seriously going to destroy everything you have built for the sake of nostalgia and a few extra gold bars in your stocking. And when that happens, I want you to look at that Rolling Stone interview again, and I want you to come back to this video and all of the comments that some have left already, and I want you to know that you got no one to fucking blame but yourself, Nikki. But your fucking self. Alright, so thank you for listening to me rant. Why don't we finish this off on a much more enthusiastic and, intelligent note. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's all I got. By opening up a genuine discussion and debate about what other bands we'd rather see reunite in the world of hard rock and heavy metal. Because realistically, no one stays retired forever. Everyone comes back for something, even if it is just this little tiny moment in history and time. And it's fun to talk about what bands we would want to see come back, even if it was just a single itty-bitty little moment in time. So I reached out to you in the community tab of this channel, and I asked you exactly that. I asked you guys what bands you would like to see reunited. So let's get right into that, and then I'll talk about what bands I want to see reunited, and then we'll all go to sleep, I guess, because Lord knows I can't handle talking about more Motley Crue after this. No, not at all. And let's start with this particular comment from Matthew McDonald, who has become a regular viewer on the Metal Meltdown, at least as far as I can tell, and also had one of the first and maybe one of the best responses. He says here, botch, without question. I know that Brian went on to form the excellent art punk band These Arms Are Snakes, and Dave is the resident heartstring puller in Minus the Bear, two bands I dearly love. But to get to mosh my old bones to Mondrian was a liar would make my life a little bit sweeter. They quit while they were on top with Dillinger Escape Plan, Every Time I Die, and newer bands like Frontier and Car Bomb filling the mathcore breach, but I would sell a digit or a molar for pit tickets to a botch reunion show. Matthew, I'm right there with you. I would love to see Botch come back, even if it truly was just for one fucking show. Even if I couldn't be there myself, like if there was a DVD or something, or a live album, or I saw it on YouTube, that would be awesome. I think that this is a severely underrated and underappreciated band, and I think that there's a lot of stuff about them that would really resonate in today's modern heavy metal and hardcore scene. I don't know the chances of this ever actually happening, mind you, since, as you've noted, these guys are busy with their own respective projects, but this would nonetheless be something really fun to see. I Need Sprite says, Mr. Bungle, I know they have live dates now, but I'd love to see a new studio release. It's a shame they only got a 3-album run, and they deserve to explore more sounds and concepts. Fully agree with this as well. Granted, I'm happy that Mr. Bungle is coming back for a few shows early next year, and I'm especially happy that Mike Patton has teamed up with some incredible talent to help him pull this off, such as Anthrax guitarist Scott Ian and his now frequent collaborator Dave Lombardo of Dead Cross and Phantomas, and of course, Slayer. Duh. But it's also for those exact reasons that I'd love to hear some new music from Mr. Bungle. I mean, Mike Patton is one of the most versatile and insane musicians in all of popular music. So imagine what he could fucking create in 2019 with these two guys at his disposal. For that matter, with the amount of other musicians that he could pull in and call up, how they could contribute to this record and how they could all create something super special and wild and unpredictable. And what makes this all the more exciting and frustrating at the same time is the fact that this would actually be pretty easy time-wise for Patton to pull off. I mean, let's be honest, Faith No More is not exactly the busiest band in the world right now, if they even arguably still are a thing. And his most recent project, Dead Cross, put out one album nearly, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago? I can't remember. But the point is, it's been a while, and they didn't exactly do a lot of touring in support of it. Like, he's clearly got the time, even if Dave and Scott and everyone else don't. So, yeah, I definitely love to see this, and frankly, I don't really see a reason why it shouldn't really fully happen. So, get on that, Mike. Chicho Lino says, classic Sepultura. I enjoy both new Sepultura and the Cavalera bands, but I feel they're much stronger together. As much as I love Sepultura, as much as I love records like Arise and Beneath the Remains and Roots, I don't really ever see this happening. I just don't, unfortunately. Because the Cavalera brothers have frankly partnered a bunch and have kept the spirit of classic Sepultura alive through their projects, quite literally and figuratively, given the Cavalera returns to Sepultura shit they've been doing as of late. And then you have the actual Sepultura who, granted, were not on the best streak for a long time, but these last couple of years, they pulled up their fucking pants, they got their shit together, and they've been putting out some pretty solid music. There's just ultimately no reason for these two groups to get together and make it happen, and for that reason alone, this is a pretty difficult thing to see happening. But I won't argue with you that it wouldn't be super cool to see, because it absolutely would be. But frankly, this is one dream that I don't know I think will be coming true, unfortunately. And tell you what, Chicho, if I'm wrong and they actually do get back together someday, I'll buy you a drink in celebration. If I'm right and it never happens, then how about you buy me a drink and we'll drown our sorrows. Either way, we're drinking, but, different circumstances, different consequences, different celebrations. Anna P. says, 3 inches of blood. Super down with this as well. I mean, these guys are a great and underrated Canadian heavy metal band with their own unique fusion of power metal, speed metal, and traditional heavy metal that was pushed to its absolute sonic limits. I mean, these guys weren't really extreme metal, not really in the way that Napalm Death or Cannibal Corpse might be, but they definitely pushed their sounds to the absolute extreme levels. Some of these guys are busy with other projects. Their drummer in particular, Ash Pearson, has been touring with Revocation for the last couple of years. If I'm not mistaken, some of these other guys are part of other bands that I frankly don't know the name of off the top of my head. So for those reasons, this would be difficult, but it would certainly be cool to see. Ron Haggerty says Anacrusis, because they were absolutely one of the most underrated bands in metal. I actually don't really know enough about this band to comment on whether or not this would be a cool thing to see. I mean, I guess inherently it would be, but I don't know. I just don't have the proper knowledge or insight on this, frankly. But I will tell you, Ron, that when I was doing some research, I did find this curious little nugget of information on Wikipedia, where it says here, on July 11th, 2019, it was announced that Anacrusis would play a one-off reunion show in December in their home state of Missouri to celebrate the reissues of all 4 of their albums, with one part of the show being with drummer Mike Owen, one part with Chad Smith, and the last with Paul Miles. Now, I couldn't find much more information on this whole thing, but hey, apparently you're such a super fan, so I hope that helps. Maybe go see them in Missouri. Let me know how it is. And I hope for your sake that maybe means we'll see more of them so that I can learn more about them. Because like I said, that would be inherently pretty cool. John Sarah says, and I apologize, I'm reading it exactly as it's written here. Led Zeppelin, 'cause coolest ever in hit. Stairway Heaven, many hits. I almost got see them in 1980. John bought Die would eat least ounce. Next one would Rush, 'cause a song about a guitar can a sci-fi way. Man, I don't mean to be disrespectful, John, because I don't know you. I don't know where you're from, but I feel like I had a fucking stroke while reading that. More importantly, let's address the very simple fact that as awesome as Led Zeppelin are, as awesome as it would be to see them, it's just never going to happen. Robert Plant does not want it to happen. The other guys have tried to do other projects in a similar vein to Led Zeppelin that have all fallen apart. The closest we will ever get is the Celebration Day live album, and we're just going to have to suck it up and move on. As far as Rush is concerned, I guess purely objectively speaking, this is way more likely, but still not really likely. I mean, these guys are old. They've been doing this as long as any of the guys in Led Zeppelin. They've earned their retirement. I would be fine if they simply stayed in retirement. Eli Weekly says, Vector. Man, I don't know how to even respond to that. Okay. Vector have undeniably made some of the most technically ambitious, intelligent, and inspiring thrash metal records of this generation, possibly of all time. I honestly don't think that's much of a stretch to say. These guys are mega fucking talented and have made some mega awesome shit. But unfortunately, the legal situation clouding Vector's main man and leader, David DeSanto, makes this incredibly fucking difficult. I don't want to get into a huge argument about sexual assault and domestic battery, but it is on public record that he, beat the shit out of his wife and treated her like fucking trash, and that is not something that a major record label would want to associate themselves with in a post-Me Too world. More importantly, it's worth noting that almost every single member of Vector left Vector shortly after the release of Terminal Redux, and as far as we know, it had nothing to do with the legal shit surrounding David. And now that we know that shit, it would frankly be very difficult to convince a guitarist or a bassist to sign up with a controversial figure. I mean, the backlash they would face would be almost immediate. Like, the only reason Leviathan was able to bounce back after similar concerns would have been the fact that Leviathan was ultimately a one-man band and didn't have to rely on record labels and outside musicians and people, whereas Vector kinda does, which isn't to say that it's impossible. It certainly is possible that David can get his shit together and can make a record, even if it is self-released, even if he plays every instrument, but right now, considering the cultural climate, the political climate, considering that David has a lot more important shit to deal with, I don't see this happening for a long, long time, if ever, frankly. Gore-eating Slamdozer says, Orchidectomy, 'cause I need some serious brutality in my life. Necrophagist and Viremia, 'cause I also need some technical shit too. Oridectomy or Viremia, however the fuck those are pronounced. I'm not familiar with these bands, so it's not fair for me to comment on these bands. However, Necrophagus would be seriously fucking cool. I have absolutely no idea how likely this is at this point, especially considering that as far as we know, there was no real progress made on the legendary Lost third album. More importantly, a lot of time has passed since that last album, so it would be extremely difficult to convince essentially a new generation of metalheads to get really excited over this unless you were doing some absolutely mind-blowing shit. Which, I guess, to be fair, if anyone could pull that off, it probably is Necrophagus. But, I don't know. I like this idea, don't get me wrong. But I don't know if I see it happening, buddy. I'll make the same deal with you that I made with Chicho, though. If they get together, I'll buy you a drink. If they don't, you can buy me a drink. Either way, we're drinking. Sound good? And let's finish this off with one more comment from Connor Eadson, who didn't have much to say in regards to what bands he'd like to see reunited, but instead took the opportunity to make one last statement about Motley Crue. I'm a tad worried as Vince's voice is at times unbearable. I can't say I'm not excited though. Hopefully some new music will come with this. Oh god, no, I am terrified by the prospect of new music. Oh, fuck no. Those fucking original tracks from the Dirt compilation, those were bad enough. I mean, Like a Virgin is one of the most cringeworthy fucking tracks of this year, of all time. It's a fucking disaster. It's a fucking train wreck. It's like watching the Hindenburg crash into the Twin Towers, crash into a sandpit, going into the fucking ocean, forcing a tidal wave into an iceberg, sinking the fucking Titanic. It's terrible. I don't want to hear it. So I promise you I don't want to hear a full fucking album of that. My god. Motley Crue, I will buy every fucking ticket to every fucking show on that fucking tour, so long as it means you do not make a fucking album. Please fucking don't. If the zombie apocalypse happened right fucking now, I can promise you I would not be as scared by that as I would be by the idea of a new Motley Crue record. My fucking god, I don't want that. With that in mind, and considering the fact that all this talk of drowning my sorrows has made me a little bit thirsty, I think we can end this off right here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing with my bullshit. Let me know what other bands you'd want to see reunited. Press this button here to subscribe for updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.